Hi, in this video we're going to learn how to add a few last kind of random features to our fantasy landscapes. These are optional that you may want to include, but I want everyone to follow along with this in practice. And these features are ribbons, walls, and cliffs. And that might seem a little bit random, but you'll see how they kind of relate to each other. So we are actually first going to learn how to draw and shade a ribbon. And so what you're going to do is you're going to start by doing a line that's something like that, kind of a squiggly line. But what you do not want to do is a line that looks more like this, that has these big, wide curves on it. You want your curves to get a little narrower at the tips. It just works better. You also don't want your curves to go out further than the last curve too much. You can see that all of mine are kind of inside each other. If that doesn't make sense, just draw a line that kind of looks like my line. Then what you're going to do is from the outer edge of each curve, you're going to draw a line straight down. Now you could just freehand this if you really want to be, super neat about it. You could use your ruler. But you're just drawing a short line that's coming down from each of the outer edges of the curve. Then from the bottom of each edge, you're going to draw a line that's the same curve as the parallel line to it, the line next to it. So if this one card's curving, so does that one. So it has a similar curve. And you can see it's starting to look ribbon-like. And then at the edge here, I'm going to add one more parallel line, and then I can make my end look ribbon-like if I want to. But you can imagine that, well, actually, we'll shade it in first, and then I'll show you this. So the inner parts of my ribbon are going to have less light shining on them, so they're going to be a little bit darker shading. And as I fade towards the outside, my shading's going to gradually get lighter, lighter, lighter. Again, here I'm going to have some shading that's just very light. And then this center part, I'm going to imagine that's where the light is hitting it, and that's like the shiny, lighter part. Again, on my inner curve, I'm going to have my darkest shading. It's going to fade to light in the middle. And on the outer curve, I'm just going to put a little light shading. So these are just my tricks for making your ribbon look 3D and kind of shiny. So again, darker shading on the inside of the curves, bright highlight in the middle, and just a little light shading on the outside of the curves. So we drew this thinking of it as a ribbon, but what I wanted to show you is that you could also think of it as a wall. If you put little tiny people next to it, that could become some sort of kind of wall-like structure in your fantasy landscape if you've messed around with the scale. So the other thing, though, that these kind of relate to is cliffs. What I'm going to show you next is how to do a similar kind of line and shading, but for a cliff. So I'm going to imagine, I'm just going to do this on the bottom of my paper, but I'm going to imagine that this is a horizon line in my landscape. Here's my vanishing point, and I'm going to draw a line like this, coming out, very similar to the line that I started from my ribbon, right? And then I'm going to start from the vanishing point again, and I'm going to draw another line like that. And I'm going to pretend that this is like a canyon, okay? And what I'm going to do is from each one of my inner curves, I'm going to draw a line straight down, and these are going to start to become cliffs of a canyon. So I'm drawing a line straight down from this one, straight down from this one, straight down from this one. And now you can see it's starting to look like a canyon. And if I put shading, oh, I forgot one right here too. There we go. Now if I put some shading in, it's going to start looking even more canyon-like. And I'm not going to spend time shading the whole thing right now, but if you look at, here's another example. Here's one that's all shaded in. You could pause your video right now and take a look at how this is shaded. Darker in the corners, lighter right in the middle, a little bit of shading on the inner edges. So really similar to the ribbon. So you could pause and look at this if you wanted to practice on your own. Now, very similar to that, and if you don't have any more room on this page, you can turn it over to the back. We're going to learn how to draw one more thing, and that is a cliff. And a cliff could be something like if you have, here, imagine that this is the horizon line. Maybe you only want to have half a landscape, and you want to have something that looks like that, and this could be your cliff, right? If you drew line straight down from here. It looks a little bit odd that way. I'm not sure if I did it the best. But I will show you some examples of people that did it a little bit better. But you can imagine, right, that once this has some shading, that this could become like a cliff in your landscape. So now that you have these tools, how to draw a cliff, maybe you want to have another cliff over here, right? So there's this big gap in the middle, kind of a funny surrealist idea. But you have your cliffs, you have your canyons, you have your ribbons or walls. These are features you could choose to include in your fantasy landscape to add some extra depth and shading and geological features. So up to you and good luck.